Breaking news coming out moments ago as take a look at the latest headlines with me coming out just a couple of minutes ago. Breaking news, the U.S. has launched retaliatory strikes in Syria targeting ISIS. Hegseth has announced. Here's another one. U.S. strikes. This is a CBS News live feed. ISIS targets in Syria after 2 soldiers and interpreter were killed last week. You can see this just coming out a little while ago, and I've got video footage and articles that are coming out right now. I'm going to be sharing with you the latest as take a look. Hegseth announces operation to eliminate ISIS fighters in Syria after the deaths of Americans. And if you agree with this move and that we should be wiping out ISIS, eliminating this group, it says this is what the plan is. Drop a 47 in the comments for support for Donald Trump. Now, if you disagree with this move and you don't think that we should be retaliating in Syria against these ISIS factions, drop a 46 for the previous administration. But right now we're hearing Donald Trump, Hegseth, they're announcing strikes are happening right now as we speak on multiple ISIS targets in Syria in response to the loss of those soldiers over the past weekend. So I'm going to dive into the video footage and articles. And again, this just being announced here probably in the last hour or so, just in the past couple of minutes. We're starting to see articles rolling out and video footage. So I'm going to share with you the latest coming out. There's not a whole lot, just this breaking news announcement. In fact, you could see it on the band on that first one here. It's in red on the top. This is breaking news just happening right now. So I'm just going to get you caught up on the latest as to what we know, what's unfolding. We're going to watch it. And if you appreciate that, do me a favor before we dive in, take a quick second, hit that thumbs up like button for me. Just help support the channel while we're live. Subscribe to stay up to date. It's totally free. Why not? And also the articles I'm going to be referencing, they're going to be linked in the description below. I cite all the sources, put it on the screen, read right from it so you can know and rest assured that this is the latest information. But with that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at this video footage coming out just a little while ago so that way you can see it for yourself.
A large military strike against multiple targets in central Syria. Retaliation for the deadly ambush killing 2 American soldiers and their civilian interpreter, a U.S. interpreter. U.S. Central Command saying American forces are actively executing a large-scale strike against weapons and ISIS infrastructure. In fact, we just heard from Secretary Pete Hegseth, who has tweeted earlier today, U.S. forces commenced Operation Hawkeye Strike in Syria to eliminate ISIS fighters, infrastructure, and weapon sites in direct response to the attack on U.S. forces that occurred on December 13th in Palmyra, Syria. A U.S. official telling ABC News tonight the strike involves fighter jets, attack helicopters, artillery, dozens upon dozens of targets. The operation aimed at delivering a significant blow to ISIS remnants, ISIS infrastructure, and eliminating ISIS weapons. The strikes are targeting multiple locations in central Syria. Prior to the airstrikes, U.S. partners in the region with U.S. support led 10 operations resulting in the capture or killing of 23 ISIS operatives. These operations were a prelude to the current large-scale strikes now underway tonight. And as I mentioned, this all comes after last Saturday, Sergeant William Howard and Sergeant Edgar Torres Tovar, both of Iowa, and their U.S. interpreter were all killed by a lone ISIS gunman. They were the first U.S. combat deaths in Syria since 2019 and since the fall of President Bashar al-Assad. President Trump attending their dignified transfer on Wednesday. He previously vowed ISIS would be, quote, hit hard for the ambush. I want to get right to our chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce. She's live at the White House tonight. Mary, you have more of what Secretary Hegseth has said at this hour.
David, the defense secretary goes on to say that this is not the beginning of a war. It is a declaration of vengeance. And he adds that the United States of America under President Trump's leadership will never hesitate and never relent to defend our people. As you mentioned, President Trump had made it clear ever since this deadly ambush last weekend that there would be serious retaliation from the U.S. In fact, he said that ISIS would be hit hard. He has also, in his remarks since then, made it very clear to stress that this had nothing to do with the Syrian government, that this had everything to do with ISIS. Of course, this president has aligned himself closely with the new Syrian president. He was just here at the White House a little over a month ago. It will be interesting to see what, if any, coordination may have occurred here between the Trump administration and the Syrian government. And of course, it all coming just 2 days after the president was there at Dover for the dignified transfer, meeting privately with the families of the fallen. David.
Again, the breaking news, Mary, thank you. The breaking news, the U.S. has launched a large military strike against multiple multiple targets in central Syria at this hour. Retaliation for the deadly ambush killing of 2 American soldiers and their civilian interpreter, a U.S. interpreter, last Saturday. Of course, I'll have more with the entire team on World News Tonight. For many of you in the East, we return you now to your local news, and I'll see you shortly.
There you have it, you guys. So again, that coming out just moments ago, and I'm actually taking a look right now at the video footages that are starting to pour in. But in the meantime, while that's coming in here, let's take a look at some of the articles that are going to give you the news as to what has been coming out here just in about the past hour or so. We are live 5:15 p.m. Central Standard Time here in Houston, Texas today, December 19th, 2025. Let's take a look at this here. The U.S. has launched retaliatory strikes in Syria targeting ISIS, Hegseth has announced. And again, if you agree with this, if you're glad to see this response, drop those 47s in the comments for support for the Trump administration, as they're saying there would be a heavy response, and now we are seeing multiple targets being hit today. It says the U.S. military launched retaliatory strikes on Friday against ISIS targets in Syria, according to a statement issued by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth on social media. Oh, wow. And that is all that we have. So again, this is just coming out, and that's just about all the information that we have, is that this is taking place right now at this moment. Let's take a look and see if we got any more information coming out from CBS News. And as you know, I'm actually reading this live with you as it's coming out. So I expected there to be more information than that. But hey, sometimes that's what happens live. I'm also pulling up some more video footage as we speak. But let's go ahead and take a look at this. CBS News. The U.S. strikes ISIS targets in Syria after 2 soldiers and an interpreter were killed last week. Now it says the U.S. is conducting airstrikes against ISIS targets in Syria in retaliation for the attack that killed 2 American soldiers and a U.S. interpreter on Saturday this past weekend, multiple sources told CBS News. Now, one of the officials said that the U.S. began striking dozens of targets at multiple locations across central Syria using fighter aircraft, attack helicopters, and artillery. So again, multiple attacks across Syria are unfolding. U.S. Central Command described the operation as a massive strike and indicated that it was retaliatory in a post on X. President Trump and Defense Secretary Hegseth attended the dignified transfer at Dover Air Force Base earlier this week for the 2 soldiers killed, Sergeant Williams Howard and Sergeant Edgar Torres Tavar, both of the Iowa National Guard, and the interpreter, Ayed Mansour Sakat. The 3 individuals were killed when, according to the Pentagon, a lone ISIS gunman ambushed them while they were supporting a key leader in Palmyra, Syria. 3 other members of the Iowa National Guard were wounded in the attack as well. Now, Mr. Trump vowed very serious retaliation in a True Social post after the attack, and Hegseth also vowed to avenge these fallen Americans with overwhelming force. Hegseth announced in a post on X Friday that the U.S. forces have begun Operation Hawkeye Strike in Syria to eliminate ISIS fighters, infrastructure, and weapon sites in direct response to the attack on U.S. forces. Today we hunted and we killed our enemies, Hegseth continued. Lots of them, and we will continue. Now, after the operation began, White House spokesperson Anna Kelly said in a statement, President Trump told the world that the United States would retaliate for killing our heroes by ISIS in Syria, and he is delivering on that promise. This is a developing story and will be updated as more news comes out. So again, we have very little information on this that is just coming out right now. This coming out from ABC News and this particular one from CBS. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at some more video footage that I pulled up here from NBC News coming out just a little while ago as well, so you can see the latest on the reports.
Hey, good evening. We are coming on the air with breaking news right now out of the Middle East. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth saying that the Pentagon has just launched retaliatory strikes on ISIS targets in Syria in response to an attack that killed American troops last weekend. I want to get straight to our senior national security correspondent, Courtney Cuby, who joins us live. Courtney, again, these were in retaliation for that ambush attack that happened on those 2 National Guard troops from Iowa.
Yeah, that's right. Just about a week ago, we heard that news, the ambush near Palmyra, which is in central Syria. It's not too far from where the U.S. actually has a military garrison there in southern Syria known as Atan. But Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth today announcing via social media the beginning of what he called Operation Hawkeye Strike. It's an effort to eliminate additional ISIS locations throughout Syria. Now, the types of locations that they're going to hit in these sorts of operations would be infrastructure. So places where ISIS will store their weapons, where they potentially will build things like drones, potentially even places where they will conduct training. Remember, the ISIS presence is not the same as it was a decade ago. It is much more disparate, is much more spread out. They don't have large locations that would be an obvious target point, but Central Command, the regional military command that owns Syria and owns that whole area for the United States military, they always have options for strikes like these. President Trump, in literally the hours after that attack last Saturday, came out and said that he planned to retaliate, and he planned to retaliate big. The U.S. military launching that. The big question now is how and when, or will ISIS respond? And I think that is what will dictate whether this Operation Hawkeye Strike ends today or whether it continues for a matter of days or even weeks, Tom.
But Courtney, these initial strikes are not just one and done, right? It seems to be a little bit more widespread than we thought.
It is. I mean, it's the similar kind of locations and targets that we would expect in something like this. So, again, infrastructure, weapons caches, that sort of thing. But the big question now is, were they able to get all the locations that they wanted to target here? I'm told that this is multiple U.S. military platforms that were involved in this, different types of fixed-wing aircraft and helicopters and military assets. The question is, though, if ISIS hits back at the American presence there, then we definitely we should expect to see continued retaliation from the United States. Based off of the social media posts that we've already seen out of Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, it does not appear that this is something that he will let go if ISIS hits back.
Wow, there you have it, you guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And should this be something that they let go if ISIS hits back? Absolutely not, would be my thought. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, as we're also hearing a lot of people right now are saying they believe that the sleeper cells that are in the United States are waking up. It seems like we're seeing shootings almost every day now. In fact, there was one today in Arizona as well. Haven't got all the information on that, but we're hearing that there are a lot of attacks that are taking place similar to what we saw in Syria. We saw that on the National Guards by the White House in D.C. not too long ago. There is a lot going on, and let me know, do you agree with this response? And do you agree with further response if ISIS does strike back? Are you concerned about ISIS striking back? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. But right now we're hearing that this is going on right now. The United States is responding. Donald Trump is a Fox News Alert Secretary of War for us to respond back. Now, let's take a look at some more video footage coming out here so that way you can see it for yourself. Like I said, it's just starting to pour in because this is breaking news. Don't have a whole lot of information, but as it's trickling in, I am trying to pull the feeds for you so that way you can see the latest. This one just coming out 21 minutes ago.
And we're continuing our coverage of this major announcement. The Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, announcing that the U.S. has carried out a major strike inside of Syria. This is just days after we learned of the killings of Sergeant William Howard and Sergeant Edward Tolliver of Iowa, both of Iowa, and their U.S. civilian interpreter. Secretary Hegseth saying that this is not the beginning of a war. He called it a declaration of vengeance. And joining me now is ABC News senior national policy reporter Ann Flaherty and ABC News national security and defense analyst Mick Mulroy. And Ann, I think this was the big question, was how was the U.S. going to respond after those attacks against both those sergeants and that U.S. civilian? But what are we learning now?
Yeah, Alex, we had heard the president say that he planned to retaliate. Everyone was watching for some kind of action. And of course, learning just moments ago that the operation is underway, we do expect it to continue for some time. We're told dozens upon dozens of targets in central Syria are being hit. These are weapons storage areas. These are infrastructure belonging to ISIS. Now, I want to remind you that it was just 7 years ago in Trump's first term that he had declared that the U.S. had he declared victory against against ISIS, and had wanted to begin to pull troops out. Now, earlier this spring, he had cut the number of U.S. troops there, but really that attack we saw last Saturday of those 3 American deaths underscoring that this still remains a very, very dangerous area. Alex.
Well, and Mick, in his statement, Secretary Hegseth said today, we hunted and killed our enemies, a lot of them. Any insight as to how the U.S. Gathered its information, disseminated that, and then ultimately carried out what appears to be the start of what could be a series of attacks here?
So, Alex, likely right after the attack that killed these 2 U.S. soldiers and their interpreter, they did an intelligence surge to determine obviously who did it, and he was killed in the attack itself, and then exploit everything they could off of this individual to try to have leads, essentially, that they could retaliate against. And I think what we're seeing tonight is the result of that intelligence surge. They apparently have hit dozens of targets. They're trying to send a message to ISIS. Bad idea. Don't do it again. The U.S. is there, of course, to ensure the enduring defeat of ISIS. And there's still remaining elements of it. But I think tonight it's going to be significantly depleted, and it sends a message both to ISIS and to the U.S. servicemen and women that are in Syria that they are essentially going to be protected with serious consequences to anybody that should attack them.
Well, and Mick, as Ann pointed out, during the first Trump administration, he announced that he had defeated ISIS or eliminated ISIS. I'm curious, do we have any assessment as to how ISIS stands in the region, what their capabilities are? Any insights there?
So the defeat of the caliphate was when they were essentially removed from occupying territory, especially population centers. There's still, of course, ISIS in Syria and in parts of Iraq. It's hard, if not impossible, to completely eradicate the philosophy, the warped philosophy that is the Islamic State. But this is why the U.S. has forces there. We work alongside our partners, the Syrian Defense Forces, and now the Syrian government, to ensure that they don't come back and don't reconstitute themselves. It's important to point out, at their height, over 1 million people were under their control. It's not the case now, and that's why this mission is enduring.
All right, Ann and Mick, thank you.
There you have it, you guys. Let's go ahead and take a look at some more video footage that I found is coming out here. This is coming out from Fox News.
We begin tonight with President Trump's response to last week's killing of 2 American service members and a civilian interpreter in Syria. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth calls new airstrikes tonight in Syria a declaration of vengeance against ISIS terrorists. We have Fox team coverage on the breaking story. Trey Yanks is in Tel Aviv with reaction to the strikes, and Chief National Security Correspondent Jennifer Griffin starts us off with what we know here in Washington. Good evening, Jennifer.
Good evening, Brett. A senior U.S. official tells Fox the U.S. military has struck more than 50 ISIS targets in the past 2 hours following the president's order to, quote, hit them hard after the killing of 3 Americans Saturday, 2 members of the Iowa National Guard and their civilian translator, by a member of the Syrian security forces. U.S. Central Command launched a massive strike on dozens of ISIS targets in an operation called Operation Hawkeye Strike. Iowa is the Hawkeye state. The strikes took place at multiple locations across Syria. The targets include ISIS infrastructure and weapons storage sites. Pentagon Chief Pete Hegseth tweeted, quote, "This is not the beginning of a war. It is a declaration of vengeance. The United States of America under President Trump's leadership will never hesitate and never relent to defend our people." Sergeant William Nate Howard, 29, of Marshalltown, and Sergeant Edgar Torres Tovar, 25, of Des Moines, and their civilian interpreter, Ayad Mansour Sakat of Michigan, returned home in a dignified transfer Wednesday at Dover Air Force Base in Delaware, where they were met by the president. The December 13th attack, which took place while a senior U.S. military commander was meeting his Syrian counterparts near Palmyra in central Syria. Afterwards, Syrian security forces helped carry out 10 partnered operations across Syria that led to the death, we're told, or detainment of more than 24 ISIS-affiliated individuals. The U.S. provided support during those raids. Those raids, Brett, led to the confiscation of electronics and individual interviews that resulted in the intelligence intelligence used for this operation to locate potential targets. A CENTCOM review is ongoing into the exact affiliation of the Syrian gunman who joined the security forces just 2 months before. The gunman was in the process, Brett, of being removed from the Syrian military for suspected jihadist ties. Brett?
I mean, Jen, more than 4 dozen targets. That's quite a lot, I mean, actually.
That's a lot. It included airstrikes as well as artillery strikes. We'll have to see some of the bomb damage assessment, but this was a very, very broad set of strikes tonight in response to the killing of those Americans.
Okay, Jennifer, thank you.
There you have it, you guys. Now, we've also got some more video footage here. This is a short coming out from Fox News. Let's see what they have to say.
This is a Fox News alert. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth announcing that America has struck Islamic State targets in Syria. Hegseth calling it a declaration of vengeance after 2 U.S. troops and a translator were killed in that country this past weekend. A senior U.S. official telling Jen Griffin the strike was massive and took out more than 50 targets.
There you have it, you guys. So there is information starting to pour in. Let's go ahead and take a look at this article that I managed to pull up and see if it gives us a little bit more detail as to what is going on here. This one says the U.S. launches operation to eliminate ISIS fighters in Syria, Hegseth says. And again, if you appreciate what they're doing and you think this is the right move, drop a 47 in the comments. Now, you heard them say that there are some people that are concerned about retaliation from ISIS. Are you concerned? If so, put yes. If no, put no. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, because there are some that are concerned about the threat of sleeper cells here in the United States. We've been hearing that there have been a lot of attacks that have been taking place recently inspired by ISIS. Are you concerned about that? Yes or no? Let me know. Some people are saying yes. They're concerned about it. They're thinking about what are the next steps that ISIS might take. We've been hearing warnings about attacks happening right now as we enter into 2026. Some people say no, they're not concerned. This is necessary. We need to strike. We need to do exactly what they're saying Hegseth and Trump are vocalizing, and that is eliminate ISIS, wipe them out, hit them hard, hit them now. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. But let's go ahead and take a look at this article here. Now it says, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has announced the start of an operation to eliminate ISIS fighters, infrastructure, and weapon sites in Syria following the deaths of 3 U.S. citizens. Now, this is not the beginning of war. It is a declaration of vengeance. The United States of America under President Trump's leadership will never hesitate and never relent to defend our people, he said Friday on a social media post. Now, 2 Iowa National Guard members and a U.S. civilian interpreter were killed December 13th in an attack in the Syrian desert that the Trump administration has blamed on the Islamic State group. The slain National Guard members were among hundreds of U.S. troops deployed in eastern Syria as a part of a coalition fighting IS. Now, soon afterward, words of the death, President Donald Trump pledged very serious retaliation, and we're seeing Trump making good on that promise today, but stressed that Syria was fighting alongside U.S. troops. Trump has said Syrian President Ahmad al-Shara was extremely angry and disturbed by this attack, and that the shooting attack by the gunman came as the U.S. military is expanding its cooperation with Syria's security forces. Syrian state television reported that strikes hit targets in rural areas of Deir ez-Zor and Raqqa provinces and in Jabal al-Amur area near Palmyra. It said that they targeted weapons, storage sites, and headquarters used by ISIS as launching points for its operations in the region. A U.S. official told the Associated Press that the attack was conducted using F-15 Eagle jets, A-10 Thunderbolt ground attack aircrafts, and AH-64 Apache helicopters. The official, who spoke on conditions of anonymity to discuss sensitive operations, said more strikes should be expected. Wow, okay, so there's some updated information for us, and that is that more are going to be on the way, and we've heard that this is multiple attacks that are happening, and more are coming. Now, when asked for further information, the Pentagon referred the Associated Press to Hegseth's social media post. White House officials noted that Trump had made clear that retaliation was coming. President Trump told the world that the United States would retaliate for the killing of our heroes by ISIS in Syria, and he is delivering on that promise. White House Deputy Press Secretary Ann Kelly said in a statement, Trump this week met privately with the families of the slain Americans at Dover Air Force Base in Delaware before he joined top military officials and other dignitaries on the tarmac for the dignified transfer and solemn and largely silent ritual honoring U.S. service members killed in action. The guardsmen killed in Syria on Saturday were Sergeant Edgar Brian Torres Tavar, 25, of Des Moines, and Sergeant William Nathaniel Howard, 29, of Marshalltown, according to the U.S. Army, Ayad Mansour Sakat of Macomb, Michigan, a U.S. civilian working as an interpreter, was also killed. Now, the shooting nearly a week ago near the historic city of Palmyra also wounded 3 other U.S. troops as well as members of Syria's security forces, and the gunman was killed. The assailant had joined Syria's internal security forces as a base security guard 2 months ago and recently was reassigned because of suspicion that he might be affiliated with ISIS. Interior Ministry spokesperson Noor al-Din al-Abba has said. Now, the man stormed a meeting between U.S. and Syria security officials who were having lunch together and opened fire after clashing with Syrian guards. So there you have it, you guys. Some more information coming out about these strikes, the retaliation that is taking place right now by the United States against ISIS in Syria. We're hearing multiple targets have been hit and more are going to be on the way. And again, if you support this, if you appreciate what Donald Trump is doing right now, what Pete Hegseth is doing, drop a 47 in the comments. And if you don't appreciate it, put a no in the comments or put an X. But right now we're hearing that they are saying that the time is now to strike. And they're saying, yes, there could be a retaliation by ISIS on this. However, they're saying it is time to hit them hard. And this operation literally is, they're calling it Hawkeye, eliminate ISIS. So right now, that is what the Trump administration is doing. So the breaking news coming out, I wish I had more information for you, but this is so fresh off of the news press right now that you saw some of the news articles literally had nothing in them to report on. It was just very brief, very short, just that there was a strike, there was an attack, and that as more came in, they would do some updates. And I'm just taking a look right now, refreshing the feed to see if there's any more information on these. Actually, let's see here. ABC News, the one that I read moments ago, actually does have a little bit more. So let me go ahead and take a look here and see what they've added, because since we've been live, they have refreshed the page with more information. Let's just take a look and see if I can get you any more details here as they're pouring in. U.S. launches retaliatory strikes in Syria. It says the U.S. military launched a retaliatory strike on Friday against ISIS targets in Syria, according to a statement issued by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth on social media. Hegseth said Operation Hawkeye Strike was carried out in Syria to eliminate ISIS fighters, infrastructure, and weapon sites in direct response to the attacks on U.S. forces that occurred on December 13th in Syria. And before, that was the end of the article, but they've added some more information. This is not the beginning of war. It is a declaration of vengeance, Hegseth said. The United States of America under President Trump's leadership will never hesitate and never relent to defend our people. The strikes in Syria are in retaliation for the deaths on Saturday of 3 Americans in Syria by what CENTCOM said was a lone ISIS gunman who was later killed. Reports from inside Syria, including the monitoring agency, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, reported that explosions had been heard in areas of the country. Now, the 3 fatalities included 2 Iowa National Guardsmen and a U.S. civilian interpreter. 3 other Iowa National Guardsmen were injured in the attack. Later on Saturday, President Donald Trump told reporters that the U.S. would be retaliating against ISIS for the attacks. The following day, he said that in Syria, there will be a lot of damage done to the people that did it. And we're hearing that that is what is happening right now at this moment as we speak. This is live. And as the information is pouring in, I'm sharing it with you. So we will see what comes out of this. If there's more that unfolds here, we're hearing that there will be more strikes by the United States in Syria here coming very soon As this unfolds, I'll be sure to keep you up to date. Also, we're hearing that there are going to be troops potentially on the ground here in Venezuela, that there potentially could be war going on there. There are still issues happening with Russia, Ukraine, and NATO. We've heard that Russia has sent over that IRBM, the Orshnik missile, to Belarus to be combat ready by the year 2026. So things are escalating, not de-escalating. There's still tensions in the Middle East. And also, we heard the announcement that there are going to be $1,776 checks going out to U.S. military service members. That should be going out here, they said, by December 20th. So check your mailboxes. Trump said it's already on the way. And also, we're hearing that the tariff revenue is pouring in. There could be $2,000 checks. There's also a lot of changes happening to Social Security. There is a lot going on in our world right now. I will keep you up to speed on all of it. And if you appreciate the updates, the live stream, even though I don't have the information, I'm sharing it with you as it pours in. If you appreciate that we are live here on the feed right now, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up like button. Helps the channel a ton. Also, subscribe to stay up to date. Like I said, as more comes out, I'll report it right away. And also, additional resources and the articles, I cite all of them, are going to be linked down below. And check out a lot of different ways to save money as we enter into 2026. Some people are saying we might need it. But that is the latest, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care. God bless. This is Steve.